Many of us are living full lives on the surface, productive, connected, constantly seen, and yet quietly unsure of something fundamental. Not our schedules, not our opinions on things that don't matter, something deeper. We don't quite know who we are. It isn't that we've forgotten the facts of our own lives. The trouble is more specific than that. We don't have a stable sense of what we're worth. And we don't have a reliable hold on our own values, what we actually believe, what we genuinely want, what we would choose if no one were watching. This wound is older than the internet, but it has never been harder to notice, because the world has never been better at keeping us distracted from it. We live now in an environment built to pull our attention outward at every moment. Every scroll, every notification, every metric of likes and views and follows is quietly asking us the same question. What do other people think of you? And for those of us who never developed a firm inner sense of self, that question becomes the only question. We outsource our identity to the crowd, refreshing the page to find out who we are. Without knowing who we are, we become dangerously susceptible to the verdicts of others. If someone decides we are unworthy, we find nothing inside us to push back. The criticism lands and stays, not because it is true, but because we have no stable counter-narrative to offer. We swallow the harshest readings of ourselves whole, and the opposite is equally true. When praise arrives, when something we made goes viral, when someone admires us, when a room applauds, it feels like more than pleasure. It feels like proof. Proof that we exist. Proof that we matter. We become addicted to the performance not out of vanity, but out of need. The audience becomes our mirror, and without it, we can't quite see ourselves at all. The result is a particular kind of exhaustion. We trail the mood of the room. We adjust our personality to match whoever we're with. We laugh at things we don't find funny. We take positions we don't hold, then hold them too hard. We call it adaptability. But what it really is the absence of a self sturdy enough to stay still. We should be kind with ourselves about this. Nobody is born knowing who they are. A secure identity is not something we develop alone. It is something we learn, if we are lucky, because early in our lives, someone paid us the extraordinary gift of careful attention. A good parent or caregiver or consistent presence does something that is deceptively simple. They notice us accurately. They see not just what is convenient or flattering, but what is actually there. They say, "It must really have hurt," and in doing so, confirm that our inner experience is real and worth taking seriously. They say, "It's all right not to feel what you're supposed to feel," and in doing so, give us permission to trust ourselves over the crowd. Over time, being seen like this becomes something we can do for ourselves. We learn to observe our own feelings with a little fairness, to give our own impulses the benefit of the doubt, to hold a stable, if imperfect, picture of who we are, and to return to that picture when the world around us gets loud. But this process can go wrong, and often does. A parent who mirrored back distorted versions of us, insisting we were happy when we weren't, calling us difficult when we were simply honest, gave us a scrambled foundation. We learned to doubt our own perceptions. We learned to find out how we were feeling by checking how other people were reacting. A parent who was simply absent, preoccupied with their own troubles, gave us a different wound. The quiet, persistent sense that we are not quite worth attending to. That our interior life is probably not very interesting. That the safest thing is to stay focused on others and not look too hard inward. This is why some of us have moved through entire decades of adult life without ever quite settling into ourselves. It isn't weakness. It is the logical outcome of an early environment that never offered us a reliable reflection. Recognizing this is, in itself, a kind of beginning. We are living in a moment when more people than ever are starting to make this recognition. The language of attachment, of inner child work, of nervous system regulation, ideas that once lived only in clinical settings, have entered ordinary conversation. Something is shifting. There is a growing collective sense that inner life matters, that how we relate to ourselves is not a luxury concern but a foundational one. The task now is not just awareness, it is repair. To build a stable sense of self in adulthood, we need something that resembles, in structure, what we missed. A relationship in which we are seen clearly, generously, and consistently. For many people, that begins in therapy, with someone trained to act as a reliable mirror, to reflect back what they observe without distortion, and to hold a stable and compassionate view of us even when we cannot hold it ourselves. But it doesn't have to be formal. It happens in friendships deep enough for honesty, in journals kept not for an audience but for the private act of noticing, in the slow practice of pausing, before we speak, before we agree, before we perform, and asking, what do I actually think? What do I actually feel? The philosopher in us might say, know thyself. The psychologist would add, and understand why you didn't sooner. None of this is fast. The crowd will still be loud. The metrics will still pull. The urge to check what others think before consulting our own opinion will still arise, sometimes many times a day. That is normal. The goal is not to eliminate the pull, but to build something on the inside strong enough to sometimes resist it. A self that is known, even partially, even imperfectly, changes the quality of a life in quiet but significant ways. We become a little harder to manipulate, a little less devastated by criticism, a little less inflated by praise. We start to notice when we've wandered from ourselves, and we learn, gradually, the way back. We find that we have opinions that are actually ours, values we chose rather than inherited. A voice that sounds, reliably, like us, not like whoever the room needs us to be. This is not a destination. It is a practice, but it may be the most important one available to us. To learn, at last, the art of knowing and befriending who we actually are.